Medical affairs is standing in a gold medal moment. The pressure is rising, the science is moving faster, AI is changing how doctors and patients access knowledge, and pharma is being asked to show up differently. So the question is no longer, can medical affairs keep up? It's, can medical affairs lead? In this episode of Off Label, I'm joined by Krishan Thiru from MAPA, Michelle Gallaher, award-winning health tech entrepreneur, and Olympic gold medalist Lauren Burns for a powerful preview of the upcoming MAPA Summit. We talk pressure, performance, trust, AI, community, and why this profession may be entering the most important chapter yet. Because the future hasn't been written, and medical affairs has a chance to help write it. Let's get into it. Okay, Krishan, Michelle, Lauren, welcome to Off Label. Now, this is a special one. We're here today to talk about the upcoming MAPA Summit. One of my favourite events in the world. I go to far too many of these things, but it ranks right up there at the top for medical affairs professionals across Australia and New Zealand. So I want to frame this one slightly differently because for me, it's not just another conference preview. This is a different time. The healthcare landscape, it's changing quickly. Doctors are changing on a lot of fronts, but in particular with regards to how they are accessing and acquiring knowledge nowadays. Patients are much more informed on the back of LLMs. Technology, it's faster than we are. The trust is a little bit fragile in some areas. Access pressures have never been bigger, and pharma's being asked to show up in a different way. And right in the middle of all of this sits medical affairs. Now, my view is pretty simple. If pharma's going to adapt, I believe it's medical affairs who needs to lead, not just a strategic pillar or a support function. It's got to be a leader in this new environment. So today, I really want to talk about why this moment matters, what delegates are going to expect at the MAPA Summit, and how this event can help the profession step forward with more confidence, courage, and most importantly, that word that we all are becoming very familiar with, create some impact. So let's begin. Krishan, let's refer to you first. From MAPA's perspective, what's changing most for medical affairs professionals right now? And what are people in the community of MAPA feeling?
Yeah. Great to be with you as always, Steve. And look, getting back to your first point, I very much always agree that medical affairs is at the centre of everything, but in particular in terms of how healthcare is evolving. So what's on our mind in medical affairs in pharma at the moment? So as you alluded to, I think what we're experiencing is a structural reset for both the role and the importance of our function in our industry, but really more importantly, even outside our industry, and we're within the whole external healthcare ecosystem. So the expectations of our stakeholders is increasing. The scientific bar is rising. Internal expectations are also rising around the expectations of our ability to influence externally. I think our engagement models are changing. The stakeholder set has grown well beyond traditional KOLs, and our function is continuing to evolve and probably even faster than ever before from a reactive, almost a back office support function to a proactive business leader and healthcare leader. And really there's one thing that sits at the center of that, and that is obviously AI and data. So we've always thought of ourselves as being the custodians of data, but what's changed is that that's not necessarily so. So our stakeholders, our healthcare professionals, our hospitals, our health departments, they can now obtain data and information and real world data faster than we can provide it to them, and in that real world setting as well. So our function needs to evolve as well. And that's why we have a couple of streams on that at the summit, making AI work. What does AI ready look like?
Yeah.
And around an AI competency framework. So we're really looking forward to exploring those during the summit.
Absolutely. There's a lot of interest, obviously, in the warm-up. We were talking about how we're using it, just various use cases today, but there's a bigger picture at play. Something I just want to lean into what you said then, Krishan, was you mentioned the word expectations quite a few times, and it seems to be a little bit of a sentiment that the expectations upon medical affairs are rising. Is how's that impacting members at the moment, or your peers and people in the community? Is it does that create a bit more pressure, or a bit more uncertainty, or is it excitement, or is it a bit of everything all wrapped up in a bow?
Probably a bit of everything. Pressure was actually the word that I was going. It was on the tip of my tongue, and you mentioned it. So I think the initial reaction is pressure in terms of expectations from external stakeholders, from healthcare professionals, but really expectations internally as well. And I've been around long enough to remember the good old days that no one, well, I don't know, it was the good
We were
old days,
talking
but
about that
no,
earlier, actually.
yeah, no one really cared too much what medical affairs was doing within a company. They very much care now because they know that what drives the success of organizations, which is what drives funding for pipeline in the future, is around how our science is understood, how it's communicated, firstly to regulators and payers, but then also to the healthcare community. And no one is better placed than medical affairs to perform that role. So a lot of pressure, but fantastic opportunity.
And good people as well who are up to the case. Only getting better with events like MAPA, but we'll move on to that in a moment. Michelle,
Absolutely.
so great to have you on board with this conference. You've got an amazing background and career of excellence across medicine and innovation and leadership. So when you through that sort of lens, when you look at healthcare and innovation and the broader industry landscape, what do you think that pharma and medical affairs in particular need to wake up to?
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting time, and thank you very much for having me because I think this is a conversation we really need to have, and it needs to be a conversation, not just somebody talking at you. So I love the format of this particular meeting and the opportunity of people to ask the really tough questions. My background is a clinical one, but I've also built quite a few AI platforms and have worked across from discovery right through to commercialization and the impact of AI around that. But at this particular meeting, what I really want to talk to the members about is I'm not going to be talking about AI tools. I'm not going to be giving advice on which tools. So in many ways, there's a whole lot of things I'm not going to talk about at this meeting. But what I do want to talk about at the meeting is about how can we work together to ensure the one data supply chain that we all work with from discovery right through to market launch. How do we keep the evidence in it worthy of trust? And what's the new and expanding roles, I think, for medical and scientific advisors within the pharma and medtech industry? What's the expanding role that is now emerging because of AI? So I think that's a really interesting element of the conversation. Of course, I often get accused of being the AI optimist. And I'd like to challenge that. I'm a realist when it comes to AI, but I think the most important part of this conversation is how do we build trust? How do we maintain humans in the loop? And what's the impact of this new technology going to be on, I think, the expanding role and importance of medical and scientific advisors within our industry?
It's a really, really interesting point. The thing that jumped out to me was the new roles and new kind of responsibilities of a new breed of stakeholders that will need to come into the industry. Because at the moment, sure, your global teams have your VP of AI and things like that going on, but at local levels, I'm not sure if there's any company that actually has somebody with AI in their job title, and that's across the entire local enterprise.
Yeah.
So it seems there's a bit of what the reason behind that. I don't know. I don't work in the industry, but I would like to think that maybe medical affairs can start saying, look, yeah, as Krishan says, we're the custodians of the data. We need this type of capability. We need this type of professional wrapping everything up and being across it and building capability and functionality within, rather than just giving everybody a co-pilot license. Let's build that function from within. But
Yeah.
there's lots more. There's lots of different
Yeah.
complexities and layers to that conversation, obviously. Now, Lauren, great time of year for you. The Commonwealth Games are on, bringing back very fond memories of that wonderful day in the year 2000. It's great to have you here. So you're coming at this from a very different world.
Yeah.
Elite, not AI, not medicine, elite sport, Olympic gold, performance under the biggest of pressure at all. We talked about pressure before.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows it more than somebody competing for a gold medal in front of her own country. So when people or teams face these types of big changes in high pressure environments, what separates those who freeze up from those who rise and get the job done?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm really looking forward to speaking at the summit because, I think there's a lot of parallels with high performance and elite sport and in so many different areas of our lives. But yeah, pressure on the world stage and, Olympic gold medal final is definitely a pressure situation. It's often very, it's instantaneous too, the medal match was, it was over in 9 minutes. So you've got to do it in that moment, on that day, in that time frame. But, what often really, I think, separates those who freeze or, mental blanking and those sorts of things and those who rise is often how they interpret pressure and then what they do next. So it's how they interpret it, how they respond to it. And, pressure as we get close to things that are really meaningful to us or we feel more we want to do well, it can often narrow our thinking. So we do become more cautious, more reactive, and we feel like we have to have everything set in place. So often people who perform under pressure have that ability to notice their response, regulate themselves, and then reconnect. So, there's been a lot of research around stress is enhancing mindset and reframing stress and pressure. So sometimes just the way that we can reframe it and the lens that we look through it. So I think sometimes it can be that big picture approach to how we view situation and then looking at how we choose to respond. And, I think this is a really critical time, obviously not just in medical affairs, but across so many different areas with AI. And there's so much change that's happening very rapidly and a lot of uncertainty. So it's really the way that we choose to kind of view the lens of going forward. I think that's important.
100%. It just occurred to me as well. These are sort of skills and mindsets that need to be developed across anyone in any role. But as we've just talked before, there's a bit of a reality check happening in our industry at the moment. The landscape's changing as we touch expectations. Krishan, we've talked about, they're rising as well. And medical affairs finds itself at the centre of the pharmaceutical organisation with a real opportunity to step up and lead. So this brings us to the upcoming MAPA Summit. Because, the profession needs a room where these sorts of conversations and professional development can happen. So where people can come together, challenge each other, get inspired, and remember that we're not in this doing it alone. We're doing it as a collective unit across the industry with the ultimate goal of, enhancing patient outcomes. So why does the MAPA Summit matter now? Krishan, why is this the most important time that if people haven't been to the event before, why do they have to come now?
Yeah, well, it is the most important summit we've had. There's a few unique points about it. And I think the most important is it's bringing the whole profession, the whole medical affairs profession into the one room. So hundreds of medical affairs colleagues across 2 days at ICC Sydney. You can't replicate those learnings. I know all companies have their own professional development programs. You can't replicate that inside any single company. Also, there are lots of conferences that professional conferences that people can go to, but I don't think there's one that actually brings together the whole profession without a product to sell. MAPA is not promoting anything. It's not selling anything. It's really encouraging learning and improving our professional skills and capabilities. And it mirrors the agenda this time, mirrors the three things that the profession needs right now. So the themes are strong partnerships, collaborative minds, and shared vision. The other fact is the way the actual agenda is set up. It's not only didactic plenary sessions, as valuable as those can be, it closes the gap between knowing and doing. So there are numerous hands-on workshops, data visualization workshops, decision-making labs, capability frameworks being rolled out. So people can be there this week and be putting something into practice on the following Monday when they go
Really
back
practical
to work.
day-to-day. Take it back to your organisation and provide a lot of value back for the return on that investment, I'm sure, from the company that send them along.
Definitely.
Michelle, I really admire your background and success and across the breadth of activities and industries, and I don't even know how to frame it. It seems so broad, but
Nice, thanks very much. Yeah, I'll take that little one.
yeah, take it to the bank. Why not? Sing when you're winning. But let's. Why do you think it's valuable at the moment for professionals to step out of the day-to-day and come to an event like MAPA, like with your innovative capital, entrepreneurial type capital? And why are these events important rather than just attending webinars or watching the YouTube videos online?
I think actually for medical affairs, this is a really critical time. And I think in Australia, we've got this very short window. And I think it's about 9 months. And that's how critical it is that people come to this conversation and to keep a really open mind about it. Because what we've seen is significant change, particularly with the regulator in the US around the adoption of AI, in terms of shifting the balance, which in the past it used to be very much the sponsor holding the pace, but now it's the regulator that holds the big picture. So timeframes are changing, expectations are shifting enormously, and the role of medical affairs is shifting. And so I think anybody sitting in this, particularly mid-career, is sitting here thinking what's going to happen next. You must reskill. You must be part of this conversation because this is where the big opportunities are. As I mentioned before, there are a whole lot of new elements to the role of medical affairs that are opening up, and there's some that are going to retire, as they should, as all industry does. But I want to keep people on point to remember that we need to keep the human in the loop when it comes to the adoption of AI, particularly because we're all in the human business of health. So those humans in the loop need to be more human and more aware of how they can shape the use of these tools going forward, and the role of medical affairs as being the critical human in the loop.
Absolutely. I couldn't have put it better myself. Medicine's about people. Nobody gets into medicine without caring about people and wanting to work with people. And I think that's why we can always be quite, even we all reflect sometimes on the doomsday of AI and what technology is going to do to the globe and to our industry and to our jobs. But I keep coming back to it, that medicine, healthcare is different and it's going to be built around people. Technology is going to be an enabler and help improve a lot of different systems, processes and outcomes, but the people are going to be at the heart of it, making that happen. Talking about people, Lauren, in elite performance, I want to try and relate it to coming to an event like this in terms of the people around you and how that helps. Like, how important is the environment around you, and how can we relate that to why people should come to this sort of event? If that
Well,
angle
the
makes sense.
environment, I mean, there's a great, one of my favourite researchers, psychologist Mustafa Sarkar. He's one of the leaders in like resilience research in sport, but he talks about having an environment that is, high challenge, high support. So you're challenging people, as you mentioned earlier, Steve, but you've got that supportive environment too. So, it's not, you're not complacent, you're not at burnout, but you've got that ability to challenge and support people through that growth. So the environment's really important. But when I was doing my PhD, and the first study that we did, which was I interviewed 10 world Olympic and Paralympic gold medalists, which amazing, like Ian Thorpe, Kathy Freeman, all these incredible athletes. And what came out of the data that I didn't really expect, the first thing was psychological skills and attributes were key to performance. So that's a bit of a no-brainer. But second to that was the importance of relationships and connection, and not just the things that you might think, but just all the incidental connections of catching up and talking to people. And those, I think the more that we move into the AI world, or even just in our professional spheres, that we have to have that connection to come together and to connect and share ideas. And even if it is just building relationships with colleagues that you can continue to develop, throughout the years away from conferences, it's just so vital. And from a sporting perspective, we actually call that, we've talked about it as, we call it the Performance Alliance, and it is the interpersonal relationships and connection is performance enhancing. So, it's something that's often not tangible or difficult to measure. And some people have that as a, they build those skills on their own organically, but, they are skills that we can craft and we can get better at, and we can have difficult conversations. And so showing up and being in the room, I think is, it's really important, because you never really know where that's going to lead.
Yeah, indeed. And Krishan, I wonder if you could just react to that a little bit. Like the last several MAPA, formerly APA events, something that's always struck out to me is the sense of camaraderie and spirit and togetherness that the Australian medical affairs community has. And I've been to them all overseas. There's something better here. So do you find that people go back to their work after attending an event having being lifted by those around them in a similar fashion to what Lauren said, and going back to their roles feeling bigger as opposed to just busier?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It gets back to something I was saying earlier about this being unique. I've been speaking to some of my colleagues in other functions within industry, and they, especially on the commercial side of the business, they find it hard to believe that there is this summit where everyone comes together. And obviously we're mindful of competition law, and we're not doing anything inappropriate when we're in these forums with our counterparts at other companies. But it actually is quite unique, that camaraderie. And while we're at the summit, we're not trying to get ahead of each other. We're all trying to learn and build the whole profession. And I think that is what that spirit through medical affairs in Australia really does run deep. And in recent years, so we've seen the number of people growing and growing. That is, firstly, that are being MAPA members, but more importantly, actually coming to the summit and other events. And the last couple of years, I think we reached capacity for the venues and the rooms that we have. So I encourage everyone to get in early before we reach capacity again.
There's a literal stampede happening. Get tickets first or miss out if you want that capability uplift. Let's lean into it a little bit more and make it a bit more concrete about the actual event itself, because anyone listening to this is probably going to be thinking, okay, at this point, I get why it matters. All sounds really good, but what will I actually experience if I come? So what I want to do is just get all three of you to give us some insight into what they're in store for. So, Krishan, for someone considering attending, what can they expect from this year's summit? Just in a fairly concise nutshell.
We've got obviously 3 themes that I mentioned going through the agenda: strong partnerships, collaborative minds, and shared vision. But flowing through all of those is AI capability, evidence and access, and MSL excellence. So this is really the year that AI stops being theoretical for medical affairs. And if you're not on top of it, there's a risk that you might be left behind. So I think that's where it's really critical. Access and evidence is the other area and the other theme that's running through. I think no matter what company you work in, you'll be well familiar with the commercial pressures and the difficulty with pricing reform, volatility in approvals and launch timelines. And what is medical affairs' role in helping to drive change there? Yep. MSL excellence is something we've been talking about for a while, but that is continuing to evolve as well in the new AI world as customer-facing medical colleagues evolve from being the providers of clinical data to actually helping healthcare professionals and stakeholders analyze and interpret the data that they've already found from their own AI sources. We have a strong keynote and panel lineup. Medical excellence awards as well. So a lot to look forward to.
It's you're packing a lot into the 2 days, that's for sure. Michelle, I wanted to get you quickly react to Krishan was saying to people if they're not getting upskilling themselves in AI right now, they may risk losing behind. Would you say it's just absolutely categorical? If you're not entrenching yourself right now, you will be left behind. There's no catching up at some point. It's moving so quickly.
No doubt. Yeah, there is absolutely no doubt. This is that one chance. And when I said that you've got this 9 months window, that window is closing out. I think I started saying that about 3 months ago. But what I'm going to leave the audience with is a toolbox. So for those people listening to what I've got to say, they'll walk away with a couple of tools. And one tool is about helping to ask the right questions around the AI being used. The other thing is a toolbox to help evaluate some of the evidence and some of the tools that are in our space. And the third thing is I'm going to leave the audience with a number of questions. And one of them is around the role of medical affairs. And so how medical affairs is organised within the structure of a company, is it still matching the value that's being created, or does it need to change in that space? So the other final thing that I'm going to leave people with is a bit of a governance checklist. So if something goes wrong and the AI hallucinates, who's accountable and what happens?
Wonderful. It's good to see you've got to have the sense checkers in the room because, it's one thing to get excited and start running off various agents and things, but if there's nobody controlling it, things can get out of hand quickly. That toolbox sounds like it's going to be worth the price of the admission alone. But Lauren, I'm really keen and interested to hear, without giving away too much of your keynote, what can the delegates kind of expect in terms of the theme, and B, are you going to bring your medal for show and tell?
Well, I always bring the medal, so yes, I will definitely.
I'd never take it off.
It'd be like through
Superman,
a lot of hands.
Bring it, Lauren.
Years, but it's just had a bit of a glow up, so it's nice and shiny these days. It was a bit dinted, and my daughter dropped it. It needed a bit of TLC, so yes, I'll be bringing the medal. But obviously, I come from a bit of a different lens of Olympics and high performance in sport. So I'll be sharing some of my stories and Olympic journeys, but the key messages around that relate to all of us in our everyday lives. So, looking at mindset and how we can perform under pressure and how we can, look at leading ourselves first to be able to lead others, and I guess really some tools to empower individuals and to kind of, I guess, simplify. And one of the things we always talk about in high performance is, or I spoke a lot with my performance psychologist, was around the mundanity of excellence. And sometimes it is the simple things that we do, the simple habits. We were just talking earlier off air, Michelle, you were talking about going for a walk. We actually know that has really profound effects. So kind of getting delegates to think about what it is that they need to put in their own lives. And we often know what those things are, but reminders of those elements that support us to be able to perform in our daily lives, in our work and in our personal lives as well. So yes, and I might get everyone up and do a bit of taekwondo at the end as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. So
who don't I like? Who can I have a fight with? I don't know. Everyone's so nice. I don't know who I'd want to take on. That sounds really wonderful. There's very different perspectives there that are all going to complement each other well on the day for delegates to take away. So if the listener is getting into this and hasn't been convinced yet, then there's really not much we can do for you, and you may need to check if you're in the right place. Now let's wrap up. Before we do, every off-label episode that we do finishes with a movie question, and we compare a certain scenario in the industry to a various movies. So what we're going to do is, it's always a little bit of fun. There's no right or wrong answer, but we want to imagine the setting where it's 5 years from now in medical affairs. And this is, in one version, the profession has stepped up. It leads with the science. It's earned the trust. It's built stronger partnerships in spite of the technology and used it as an enabler. We're more useful to clinicians than ever. Patients are find a way to appreciate and interact with the pharmaceutical industry. It's more influential, connected, and more confident. So the other version that we can look at is that it stays reactive, it waits for permission, and lets other functions shape the future. So which movie does the first of all, choose which future you think we're headed for, and what movie you think this could remind you of in this sort of environment that we land on. Anyone want to go first? Krishan.
Oh, well, I was going to say I definitely would pay maybe even gold class to see the first movie. I don't think I would see the other movie.
Give it a miss? Could be a bit
give
dark.
it a miss, yeah. I'm thinking of the Rotten Tomatoes rating system. I'd certainly give the other one a very high popcorn rating. I wonder if was it Apollo 13, where
Apollo
failure
13?
is not an option.
Hey, I like it.
There's
Great
sort of
movie. Sinise, Hanks,
technical
the other guy.
experts, which we are and we always have been, but we really need to step forward and lead, not sitting in the back room. And I think that's what the technical experts did to save the day in
problem
that
solved. Like we're
Yeah.
going to come across problems as an industry, and it's not one of these. It's not in my KPIs. It's like people have to find new KPIs. So I absolutely love that. I love that movie, by the way. I remember the grandma when the little kid was worried his dad wasn't going to come home. She said, "If my Jimmy was flying in a washing machine, he'd still be able to land it," or something like that. So it was that's the sort of pioneering entrepreneurial attitude that we need. Michelle, your turn.
I do. I've thought about this. So 100 years ago, my undergraduate degree, I did politics, literature, and cinema studies. So, before I went into science, random, I know, but it was about having fun at uni, not actually learning. But it was about having fun.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that's still good advice. But in cinema studies, one of the films I've always loved is called Metropolis, and the director is Giorgio Verba, and I think it was about 1927. It's a complete classic. It's in black and white. But why it's relevant, I think, to the conversation around AI is it's a movie about technology and a futuristic. So, there were robots, there were all these things which we've actually got now. But the heart of the story is about humanity. And it's about remembering ethics and our code of how we operate in the system. So it's one of those movies that talks about, and this is great because everything's automated, but we lost in the movie, you lose the human. I'm not going to ruin it for you because the music for everything. And of course, I love Art Deco. So that whole period look of it is amazing. But it's about the age of technology, and I think we're back at that point now. And so I actually think this is a wonderful movie to remind us about, yes, it's not about just because you can doesn't mean you should do it. And so I really recommend it. I think very much we're at this crossroad, and I think this is a movie that will help us make decisions about who we want to be.
Wonderful rationale, wonderful analogy. Unfortunately, you're way more cultured than I am, so I haven't seen the movie, but I'll have to rectify that.
I'm going to have to watch that now. And or especially watching it now is different than watching it even 10 years ago.
We'll put a link to it when we post this on YouTube, so people can
I think
get
it was
behind
probably, in the day, it was probably coined as a horror movie rather than futuristic. It was probably just sent people to drink after watching it.
Everyone was a lot more easily influenced, or a little bit more susceptible to the influence of movies and things like that back then. But I really, really appreciate the analogy, putting the people at the heart of the technology, and that's what it responds to. Lauren, can we finish with you?
Well, I was thinking when you were talking, Steve, I was thinking about Total Recall, when it just goes crazy in there, and it's just like it's just horrendous. But I think if I had to choose, it would be Back to the Future, because I always I think Doc says, and I'm not sure I'm getting this quote right, but the future hasn't been written yet, so make sure it's a good one.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Doc, we got to go back. I love it, guys. Thanks so much for adding that wisdom into the conversation. This event sounds, if there's ever been a must attend in medical affairs in Australia, this one is it. There's a huge challenge ahead of us, but also massive opportunity that awaits if we can work together collectively and have the conversations that need to be had. And thank you to Krishan, to you and the MAPA team for putting this event together. And for anyone listening, I thoroughly recommend checking it out. I'll be there. So will Lauren. So will Michelle. And hopefully we'll see you there too. Guys, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. It's been a great chat. Have a great one.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. See you soon.